particular demonstration is nothing more than some 2x4s on a flat piece of wood. And as you can see, there's 3 of them, and then there's a straggly piece of vegetation that's laying in the forms. So what we're trying to demonstrate here is that you can make things to control erosion on your shoreline extremely easy by using the correct type of vegetation. The piece of vegetation that's lying here is a piece of flowering dogwood. And flowering dogwood and many of the trees in the willow family will sprout with their meristems, the top part of their meristems. Like any area above here will turn into a root if you give it some kind of substrate. So we're going to look at this in a little while down on the shoreline, but what we did this winter is we decided that we would try to get people to think about doing this, because a lot of lakes in the county have erosion problems on their shoreline. And that's one of our categories in our shoreland guide that we want to dwell on. So here's the idea. You don't just put this thin little stick in there, you cut 50 of them. And you stack them back and forth so that some of the vegetative ends are down on this end, some here, some in the middle. And then what you do is you use a strap and you squash them so that you turn them into a bundle that's maybe 1.5 feet in diameter. And then what you do is use some kind of cordage. I use wire, and I'll take the wire off once they start to grow into the substrate on the soil. And then I stake them down into the bottom of the lake. And the idea is that if you do this in the spring and in the fall, the water where they're setting in, they will start to grow down into the substrate and create a root system so that wave action doesn't erode your shoreline. Now granted, shorelines on Pokegama Lake vary a lot because of the Army Corps of Engineers dam, but the reality is if you get these roots down there and you use small amounts of rock, small amounts, not these riprap situations that we're starting to see more and more in the county, but these can let the sand fall into the pieces of the branches even if they don't grow, and basically it will reinforce that shoreline for you. Again, now once the roots start to go, then we've got a way of bringing that phosphorus and that nitrogen into the plant system rather than having it be into the lake. So the dogwood and the willow, you can find it all over Itasca County. And if you're interested in doing some of this thing, probably a place to start would be to ask Itasca County if there's a place where you could go cut a few boughs of it. I mean, it grows, if you look back over here, there's a bunch of it back there. There's tons of it on everybody's land, okay? And it regrows. So once you cut it, it will just grow back again. So people that put this on their shorelines might say, hey, I don't want to block my view. The reality is just cut it down so that you can see over the top of it. And you keep the root system where it belongs, holding that shoreline and that dirt there. Okay? Up top we showed you the forms for making willow wattles, and the vegetation that you use to make those willow wattles are either some type of willow or dogwood. This particular vegetation that looks like this has a pine cone, this is an alder tree, and they're extremely native to beaches and shorelines. So what we did now is we made the willow wattle up top, and then I hauled it down here, and I don't know if the camera can pick up the stakes that are holding it in place, but it's about an 8-foot wattle. And basically there is some vegetation on the bottom that's green that's sitting in the water. So in hopes now that as time passes, those pieces of willow and pieces of dogwood that are mixed together will sprout and grow down into the shore substrate. So as you can also see, there's an old dead log laying here. This is the littoral zone of the lake, folks. You don't want this to look all beachy sandy. It's imperative that you let some of the vegetation grow on it, because as wave action hits it, it tries to displace some of the energy, and it doesn't tear up your shoreline as much. Now these alders have huge root systems, and this spring the reason that I put the willow wattle there is because I have a large cedar tree here that's seeding out, and it's starting to grow new cedars in here. And my concern was that on certain windy days, when the waves hit it, it undercuts it and it'll bring that soil into the lake. So now with that, I've got a log here, I've got the willow wattle, so when the water breaks on it and there's sand in the water because it's disturbed and it's turbid, the sand gets deposited behind the willow wattle and ultimately it will fill in with dirt and the thing should grow. So that's the idea behind it, okay? Now a lot of people want to always do riprap, and what the Whiteface Chain of Lakes Association has found out is that hard abrasive way of trying to control the erosion sometimes creates more of a problem than using regular basic vegetation like this. Now again, it's about people wanting, everything to look somewhat conforming and all cleaned up, but the reality is rock doesn't have a lot of biodiversity to it. So if you're going to do some rock, make sure that you put some plant-based stuff in there so that you develop a root system to take out and filter the water. Okay?